Hello, and welcome to our webcast. I'm Amy Pendergrass with Moss Adams, and I'm going to get us started for today's session, Healthcare C-Suite Mitigate Cyber Threats Today. We're pleased that you've joined us, and now I'm going to play our housekeeping video.
Welcome, and thanks for joining. We're pleased to present our continuing professional education webcast series. Before we begin, please keep the following in mind. You can customize how you view our presentation and interact with the presenter. For better viewing, close all other applications and turn up your speaker volume. You can adjust window size and placement or enter full screen mode using the controls at the top right of the window or dragging the bottom right-hand corner to resize. At the bottom of your screen, you'll see a series of icons that relate to a different aspect of our session. You can download a PDF of today's slides from the Slide Deck and Handouts widget. You can ask questions by typing in the Q&A window and clicking Submit. We'll do our best to answer all questions or follow up via email. If you experience technical difficulty, refresh your browser by hitting the F5 key. Today's session offers 1 CPE credit. To receive credit, you must meet the National Association of State Boards of Accountancy requirements. You must attend at least 50 minutes of the session and respond to at least 75% of polling questions. To participate in the polls, please check the button next to your answer within the slide window and click Submit. We'll track your progress and alert you when you've earned CPE credit. You can then click the certificate icon in the CPE Progress widget and download your CPE certificate. Don't worry if you can't download your CPE certificate today. We'll email you a copy in 2 weeks. If attending this webcast in a group, you must complete our group CPE attendance sheet, available in our Slide Deck and Handouts widget to receive credit. Please have all group members sign it and send only 1 sheet per group. CPE credit can only be awarded to participants registered as themselves and isn't available for participants who view the on-demand version. This presentation is not legal, investment, or accounting advice. We encourage you to seek the counsel of a professional service provider to apply this content to your specific circumstances.
All right, we have a wonderful presenter with us today. We have Troy Hawes, Managing Director here at Moss Adams. His bio and contact information is located in your webcast console. And now I would like to turn the floor over to Troy to get the presentation started.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Amy. And thank you everyone for attending today. So yes, as Amy said, I am a part of Moss Adams Cybersecurity Consulting practice. I actually lead our high trust and HIPAA compliance services within the firm. And really, I've been with the firm for over 16 years and have been doing a lot of the HIPAA security rule work probably since I started. But really part of our healthcare service line. And with that, really going into our clients and evaluating risks, cyber risks, IT risks, kind of business risks, and kind of what's going on out there. With things like the Change Healthcare breach and ransomware attack recently, really wanted to get what's going on out there in the world, and part of that is kind of understanding, well, what's the current environment like? What's happening out there? What are those threats and risks that are occurring and affecting organizations? We think that's really important. You have to know what you're trying to protect against, and then start talking about some of the various best practices or things that are coming down. Department of Health and Human Services has recently released some guidance on this as of December. Now we want to talk through what those mean and how they can help protect organizations. So as we get into this part of the presentation, we talk about the current state of cybersecurity. So a lot of times we hear that as a small organization, or maybe you're a small provider, don't have a lot of IT systems, but still think that you can't be hacked or have a ransomware attack, that's really not the case. I think we get all the big news when things like the Change Healthcare breach or these other really large breaches, attacks occur. Those make the national news. You still don't want to make your local news or anything like that if you actually get breached and your systems go down. I mean, we see this quite often, where these attacks can take systems down for a long period of time. We really want to understand those risks and threats. And so that's what we'll really get into today. With that, Amy, I'll let you talk through our first polling question.
All right, thank you, Troy. So the first polling question is, how has the Change Healthcare attack impacted your ability to deliver care or financial stability? A, it impacted our ability to care for patients. B, it impacted our ability to process claims. C, it nearly closed us down. D, it had little to no impact. Or E, not applicable. And the polling questions are located right on the slides that we're presenting. So if you can't see it, you may need to hit the F5 key to refresh your console. And then to respond, please click the button next to the answer you choose, and then make sure to hit that submit button. And people are responding pretty quickly, so we'll leave this up for another 5 seconds or so. All right, Troy, here are the results.
Okay. So it did impact systems. I think that's kind of what we're seeing here, is the ability to process claims. I mean, that's a huge piece that the Change Healthcare does. It processes those claims for you, being able to then pay providers and others based off of that. Huge impact to businesses, and we're hearing that quite a bit out there. For those that had little to no impact, great. That's good to hear. And why we bring this up is we really want to understand why or what's going on out there, and that's what this first slide is all about. It's what we call the state of cybersecurity. Here on the kind of on the left-hand side, it talks about the different attack types that occurred in 2023 that were tracked and reported on. And what we see here is the majority, or that 35%, were phishing related, so email phishing types of attacks or back business email compromise. We'll talk a little bit more about those when we dive into the threats. But ransomware, another attack type that occurred frequently within the healthcare sector. In the middle of the slide, and this is really kind of the meat of this slide, but we see kind of the average cost. So this information comes from the cost of a data breach report, and from last year. So this is a report that's put together by IBM and the Ponemon Institute. Data also comes from last year's Verizon data breach investigations report. So kind of two different reports, but reporting kind of similar information. And what it's really showing here is the average costs of a breach. So breaches, actually data has been breached. It's not a security incident. There's kind of a difference there between an incident and a breach. So breach means the data has been impacted in some way. You've lost control of it. and that's kind of what is considered a breach. That data may have left the environment or it may have stayed within the environment, but you've lost control of it in some way. Ransomware attack is a typical case where the data may still reside on your systems, but you no longer have access to it. So an average cost, if you have under 500 employees, was roughly 3 million, where and this was kind of across all the different industry groups. For a healthcare specifically, and a breach in healthcare information, it went up to about $10 million. And we've seen this increase year over year, especially since 2020. The costs have risen quite substantially within the healthcare sector. And so it's getting more and more onerous for healthcare organizations to really take a look at their cybersecurity practices, their IT systems, and understand what's going on there. How are we protecting our information? We also see that cost has risen over 50% over that time, and the actual cost of a ransomware attack was around 5 million. Again, this is kind of taking all of these different breaches that were reported, averaged out, and that's kind of the average cost. So it should be telling you that there is a huge impact with these breaches and the money that could be paid. And this is money that's maybe the ransomware payment itself, but lost business is in there, the notifications, any investigations that occurred. There's a lot of information or as well as costs once these breaches do hit an organization. Another number, and we get these on the middle in the very bottom pieces, but what they found was that an attacker actually had access to systems for over 200 days before somebody knows something was wrong. That's a long time. That's a long time for an attacker to have access. Usually that means that an attacker is doing other things. They're not doing a ransomware attack where maybe they're coming in, seeing that, and then doing the ransomware, or maybe they're just taking their time. So they're not actively doing things every day, but they've gotten access and they're trying to find the sensitive data. Where is the most important information? What can they get access to? Once they are kind of found, or the organization figures out, hey, something's going on here, it takes another 70 days on average to actually then contain that breach. We've seen this with the Change Healthcare. It's taken a long time for them to get systems back up and running, and it's been very piecemeal even to this day. So once a system is impacted, there's a lot of downtime, a lot of recovery that needs to occur, and that takes time. And that to me is really the piece that can be done better. We don't need to have those systems down for that long. And we'll talk more about those later on. The last one here on the right, it was a poll done with CEOs, and they're concerned about their ability to, one, avert an attack, but then basically the damage, or what does that mean, to them? So downtime, lost systems, lost data, whatever that is, that's a huge number. And so we're learning a lot from the Change Healthcare ransomware attack. And I wanted to provide a few bullet points on just kind of things to take away from that so far. There's definitely lots of information out there. It's getting tons of press, as well it should. But one of the first things that you really should be taking a look at is your third-party risk management program. So your third-party risk management program looks at vendors, service providers that are providing a service to your organization, and they may be processing claims or have sensitive data or maybe doing something, but they could potentially affect your operations. With the Change Healthcare, it impacted your ability to process claims. So a lot of different entities went to a different processor, had to move on to those others. But when I've talked to different groups, some of them said, yeah, we had to go find that processor and then work with that processor and try to change all of our routing and systems to point to that processor for us. And that took time. So knowing those in advance, having the potential known fallback plans, those are things to be thinking about as you're looking at third parties and their potential impact to your business, and really identifying what their security posture is. How are they ensuring the security of your data and their systems? I would also talk about kind of the importance of data security measures. I think this is one of those things that is kind of really important, just to take a look at your own controls, because you have to protect your data wherever that data is. Maybe you don't have control over it, it's stored in the cloud somewhere. So again, assessing that third party, or if you have control over the data and the security, how have you evaluated those? How have you taken a look at your own security measures? The value of proactive threat detection and response. So this is all about understanding what's going on in your network and then responding to those specific incidents, or your IT system should be providing some sort of alerting capabilities and what's happening on those systems. How is that response done? Next thing is taking a look at just security awareness training. We mentioned earlier the email phishing is part of the one things that was one of the contributors to healthcare breaches last year. It's always usually starts with some sort of phishing email to get some sort of information. So having a good practice in place, getting individuals, getting employees made aware of what they need to do. How do they know if this is a true issue or a true phishing attack? Also taking a look at the costs of ransomware payments and how this can impact financials for an organization. We did find that Change Healthcare did pay $22 million in their ransomware attack. They're also getting extorted now from another attacker. Hey, we've got this data that was exfiltrated from the systems. If you want this back, you need to pay us. So all of these things are things to think about as you're looking at how to respond to an attack. And all of this should be done before an attack, how will you respond? Would you pay? Will you not pay? If you don't pay, how are you going to restore those systems? Even if you do pay, how are you going to restore those systems? How can you get these systems back up and running? And so then working with law enforcement, cybersecurity experts to really understand and understand how the attack happened. So we've heard just this week that the attack seems to have occurred from a remote access application, that the credentials were compromised. There wasn't a multi-factor authenticator, so a third layer of authentication. So they just had the username and password that was compromised, and the attackers were able to get into that app and then move from there. We'll learn more as the weeks progress, but just understanding how to look at these things as they've happened, and then taking a look at your own practices and how do you improve your own cybersecurity posture? What does that take? So, and we'll talk through a lot of those and different aspects of that. What's kind of the expectations moving forward? Amy, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, thank you. So the second polling question is, what cybersecurity threats keep you up at night? And your options are ransomware, B, hackers breaking into my network to steal sensitive data, C, accidental breaches or leaks by employees or vendors, D, scammers posing as a vendor to initiate a payment or wire transfer, E, all of the above, or F, other. And if you select other, please let us know what that other is by using the Q&A window so we can see all of the different threats that keep you up at night. All right, responses are coming in pretty quickly. Just a reminder, if you would like to receive CPE credit, you will need to respond to at least 3 of the 4 polling questions, and then make sure to hit that submit button. All right, here are the results.
Okay, and thank you. And I think it's almost always all the above, because it's any one of these is a risk, is an issue, something to protect against. Obviously, different individuals, different organizations have different priorities and everything, but it really can be any and all of these things. And we'll talk through some of these various threats and risks, because as I mentioned earlier, we have to know what we're trying to protect against. With that, phishing and just social engineering in general is a really just a method to prey upon individuals to give up information. Most of the time, this is done through an email, but we've seen a lot of different attacks now involve email as well as phone calls. The phone calls kind of help make it seem a little more legitimate. If that phone call from that malicious actor actually works, and we've actually seen this with a recent breach, is the IT help desk was contacted. They talked to the IT help desk and were able to get credentials onto the network. They pretended they were an employee, had enough information to get the access that they needed. And once they had access, then use that to then do other things on the network and really target the systems. There's some reports out there that roughly 90% all cyber attacks kind of begin with phishing. Phishing can really be a way for an attacker to get initial information. And that's kind of what they will use. Can they get usernames, passwords, sensitive information? They'll try and do this. And then along with that, there's also this kind of encompassing kind of attack type called business email compromise. Basically, it's a type of a phishing attack, but it's more specific, if you will. It's more targeted. It's going to really look at a way to get specific information. Usually, this is a type of attack where the attacker has some sort of information already. So maybe they have compromised the email system, are tracking different emails going across. You get the access to the CFOs, for example, their email box, and kind of see what's happening. There has been numerous types of attacks like this. The false invoice scheme, I think, is the one we hear about the most. Know of an organization that was doing construction on a building, and they were the attacker had access to the controller's email box and was kind of just watching everything. Eventually saw where there was going to be a payment, so they sent an email to the controller saying, hey, we need to change our wire transfer information, and here's the new information to pay that construction vendor. And then they followed it up with a phone call and talked through what they were trying to do. So the controller made those changes and then paid over $1 million to that attacker. Finally, the construction company did go, hey, we haven't been paid. And they go, no, you have been paid. They go, that's when they actually found out they had been compromised and didn't know until then. The way that these attacks kind of happen, they are more targeted, so they are more specific, they are known. And so it makes them a little harder to detect. So there's always things to be thinking about when you're working, understanding what the ask is. Don't be clicking on links, giving out information, making changes until it's truly been vetted and you know that is an accurate request to do. So it is something to really look out for. Ransomware makes all the news these days, I think. It's and people don't know. It really is when an attacker holds data. It basically encrypts data. You can't get access to it. If you pay a ransom, then they'll give you access back to that data. Whether that data is still good or not remains to be seen. Attackers will or have started using or exfiltrating data, actually taking data out. And we see this in the Change Healthcare breach. They have exfiltrated data out. There's a ton of data. Still waiting to understand the impact and who's affected by that data and what's going to happen. And who's going to make the notifications, who's going to do what. These are things to definitely watch if you have had your systems, if you used Change Healthcare, really understand how this might impact your patients and things, and understand what's occurring on their side. ransomware can spread quickly. Usually comes via phishing email unless the attacker has some other method of access to those systems. And then once they have access, really trying to get understanding of what information do they need to actually impact, or so they want to hold ransom that very sensitive data. And this is where healthcare is really, I think, affected the most. Is attackers understand that you need that data in order to provide service. It's critical. It's critical for your healthcare providers, the patients, that their information, what they're trying to do. When you don't have access to that, it makes things a lot harder. And really trying to make sure that we've got, or providing good service to our patients, but we're so dependent on this electronic data that the attackers understand, hey, that's a critical need. And we saw this during the pandemic and 2020, hospital systems getting breached a lot because they understood how that impacted your systems, and made people really nervous about, having their information. And so what usually happens is, if you do pay a ransomware attack, there is a potential you could be attacked again. We have seen that happen. Usually the attackers are going to give you the encryption key to get your access to your data, because it's a business for them. So they know that that's what they have to do. But there is a significant business impact when these things happen. And organizations really need to be prepared for these. Number of other just threats and risks out there. Really, the one thing I wanted to point out on this is, even our own employees or vendors that have access to our systems are a risk to us. So we have to protect our systems, only provide employees with the information that they need to do their job. They don't need more than that. Healthcare, it's hard. They need a lot of information, but they can also be a risk to an organization. There are definitely multiple ways. One other method that's not on here is just the number of network devices in a large hospital, even in small provider offices. There's a number of things that are connected to the network. And when those things are connected to a network, those things can be compromised. So now we have all of these medical devices that provide good information, but they're also connected to a network to provide this data to other systems. But now they're another vehicle, another area. A lot of times those are insecure systems or haven't been patched appropriately. So really things to take a look at. We'll dive into some of the best practices here and talk through kind of what we're seeing out there and things to do. But with that, let's go ahead and get into our third polling question.
All right, so the third of 4 polling questions. How often do executive leaders or board members receive updates on the cybersecurity posture in your organization? And then your options: A, at least once per month; B, at least once per quarter; C, at least once per year; D, we don't have regular updates right now; or E, I don't know. And then just a reminder, you do have the option to submit questions for Troy in the Q&A window. He does have quite a bit of content to cover today, so if we don't get a response to you during the webcast, we will do our best to follow up with you afterwards. All right, here are the results.
Thank you. And this is actually good to see. So it's important to understand your cybersecurity posture, where your risks are, and then communicating that up to executive management, to the board of directors, whoever, whatever you need. There is no, as far as how often, but just doing that is a necessary thing. I'd say at least quarterly is a very good practice to be doing that, and then understanding how executive leadership then is responding to those risks. So one things that we see is that these things might be reported up, but they're not understood, or may not understand the real risk to the systems and things like that. So really having a good methodology for communicating to executives is important as part of a cybersecurity program. So wanted to dive into a couple of different things. So first off, I think this was in April 2023, HHS worked and created these technical volumes. This is what they call the health industry cybersecurity practices, so HICP. And they created these volumes 1 and 2. Volume 1 was for small healthcare organizations. Volume 2 was for medium-sized and large healthcare organizations. And really the goal here is to have certain cybersecurity practices in place to help mitigate risks. And so these practices are based off of current threats and risks that are impacting the healthcare sector. And so they're really, what they're trying to do is provide information out there that organizations can use to help protect their systems. We actually put the links to these volumes in the slide deck. You'll see these at the end of the slide deck, so you can actually go look at these. But they considered a small healthcare organization was basically 1 to 10 physicians, so not real big, less than 50 beds. I think medium was under 50 physicians and under 300 beds, and then large was over 50 physicians, multiple locations or multiple exchanges, and then obviously over 300 beds. That's kind of how they broke these out. But these volumes actually have very specific information in how to protect things. And here, one of the first things that they talk about is email. And so having email protection systems, so having ways to filter out or see some of those phishing emails there's a number of different methods to help secure email. And that's one of the first things that they talk about. And so they really are trying to bring these together and talk through, well, what are some of those threats and risks that are out there, and how do we then protect our systems? The last one here, we see the cybersecurity oversight and governance. That kind of goes back to that polling question, is having processes, having a methodology to communicate what your cybersecurity posture is, and having that communicated to executive management. And so all of these kind of lead into other aspects that I want to talk through, and we'll come back to these in a little bit. But what I wanted to talk about, and this kind of leads to the next step in this, is that in December of last year, HHS released their letter and basically outlining the cybersecurity strategy for the healthcare sector. So this is an important piece, and if you haven't seen the letter, I think we linked the letter in there, but you can look for healthcare sector specific cybersecurity performance goals and get this information. We'll talk through these performance goals, but that's really what they tried to do, is create a set of what they call essential and enhanced goals that organizations should meet. These are voluntary currently. These are voluntary goals that they say will help improve your cybersecurity posture. And they're good practices. And they really want to have organizations have a method to one, take a look at their cybersecurity posture, and then take a look, are they meeting these various goals? What's the maturity of those controls? How do they assess those controls? So we'll see these cybersecurity performance goals in future iterations, probably within the HIPAA security rule, for sure, will be part of this. There are working around changing the HIPAA security rule, so it's going to finally get some updates to it. It's definitely been a need for a long time, but just meeting the HIPAA security rule is not enough. So, and that's really what their goal is here, is to help organizations understand everything that they need to do. Within that, they've talked about how they'll help organizations. So part of this is going to need funding from Congress. Based off of what just happened with the Change Healthcare, Congress is already looking at, hey, we need to make changes to the healthcare sector. How do we do that? So they're going to need funding in order to make this work. And so we'll see how that funding actually comes about, and when it comes about to help organizations implement controls. Because as we will see, some of these controls, especially when we get into the enhanced performance goals, can be hard to do, can be other, will need extra layers in order to do them. So at a minimum, they have these 10 essential cybersecurity goals. And part of that, very similar to those HICP, those are very specific goals around, we see email security, we see multi-factor authentication, we see security awareness training in here. These are very basic cybersecurity practices, if you ask me. So there were 10, here's the others, around having incident response plans, having unique credentials. So this is always interesting, is sometimes the IT staff that have admin credentials on your network, that's all that they have, is they have one account, and that account has access to everything. Well, they don't need to have access to everything when they're not working on those systems. So it's really making sure that they have unique credentials when they're doing non-IT kind of related work where when they don't need admin credentials, and really separating those out. Also talking about just having vendor and supplier cybersecurity requirements. And we see these get a little more, well, enhanced as part of what they've called the enhanced goals. And this goes into just more detail of what they would really like to see. First off is asset inventory. You really have to know what you've got on your network in order to protect it. And this is one of the biggest issues within healthcare and a lot of organizations, is it's so easy now to bring up a system, hook it to the network, and now it's just operating. If I know how to get access to the wireless network, I can just bring anything in and hook it to the network. And that's an easy thing to do. Or I might move it to the cloud and do processing out in the cloud. Again, knowing where all your data is, then you'll have a better idea of how to protect it. So knowing all your systems, this is a critical piece in everything else. Also, just knowing when you need to patch systems. How do you get notifications when there's a vulnerability? How are you notified? What are you doing with that? Part of this is also understanding the whole incident reporting. There's actually been changes recently with what's called the Cyber Incident Reporting for Critical Infrastructure Act. And this act now will require certain what they call covered entities, but this goes beyond just healthcare. It goes beyond, it covers a lot, or covers basically all of the critical infrastructure, critical industries out there. But that act is going to change the breach notification requirements. So now you've got 72 hours to report a breach once it's known, and then 24 hours if you actually make a ransomware payment. So take a look at this. If you look up, was it CIRCIA, that will give you information on this act, and it's really going to change some of the reporting requirements that are out there. With that, the last few here, as far as the 10 here under the enhanced, is really understanding where all your threats are coming from, and really understanding then how to go about and configure, patch, secure those systems. All of these things are really critical to the whole portion of securing systems. Also, getting all your logs centralized, and understanding how those or the information in those logs, and what it takes to then review those logs, getting alerts from those logs. So those logs have tons of information in them, and you need to be able to correlate all of those logs to understand what's really going on your network. Will it identify a potential threat actor out there coming in and potentially exposing your systems, getting access to your systems, understanding what's out there. And last thing I would say on here is you definitely have to have incident response plans, disaster recovery plans, but then you need to test them. We see a lot of organizations have a plan, but they haven't been validated. They don't know if it's actually going to work. And it's not the easiest thing to test, but you have to go through the process of evaluating those plans. You have to know, will it work during an attack of some sort? Really going through the processes, going through the steps, and understanding what it's going to take, because it's important process to get through. And then to kind of bring all of this together, so really what we're trying to do is have a defense in-depth approach. So it's a layered approach to information security. It really kind of builds upon different aspects that we're putting in place to protect our systems. And then if you've ever heard zero trust, it basically leverages this depth in defense approach, but what it's trying to do is now it's not going to give you access to anything until you've actually been authenticated, until they know it's truly you. So it's access and logging in, but using multi-factor authentication or other layers of authentication measures to really understand that it is truly you, and then giving you access to only what you need. Again, just more controls in place here to protect systems. And then there's a number of technical, administrative, physical controls that make up this defense in depth, this layered approach. And we see some of those things in these bullets. And then in order to really know if these things are in place or are good enough, we have to test them. We have to know, have to validate, have to understand and assess those systems, those measures, those controls to really say, hey, are these worthy? Are these good? Will they protect this data at this point in time? So that's another thing to remember is whenever you have some sort of security assessment, that's a point in time, because things change. Different vulnerabilities come out all the time. So it's an ongoing process. So we always have to know where we're at least at that point in time, and then focus our efforts to secure those systems, but then constant assessments, constant reviews of those controls. And that gets us into our last polling question.
All right, thank you. So the fourth and last question is, what cybersecurity performance goal do you think represents the greatest opportunity for improvement in your organization? And your options are A, vulnerability assessment and management, B, incident planning and testing, C, management of third-party service providers, D, enhanced employee training and awareness, E, other. And again, if you select other, let us know what that is by using the Q&A window. And then F, I don't know. And then while you're responding to the last polling question, if you would like a copy of today's slides, you can download them now from the console. We'll also be sending them out via email tomorrow, along with a recording of this webcast. All right, here are the results.
Thank you. Yeah, and this is really going to be depends on every organization, really understanding where you are from a cybersecurity maturity practice and area. What do you think you need to work on? Definitely, probably employee training and awareness is one area that we see. Oftentimes, when we're going into our assessments, we're hearing, yeah, we do awareness training when somebody's onboarded and then annually. But what about all that time in between? So the attackers are coming at you every day, and so keeping cybersecurity kind of top of mind is a good way to kind of help employees understand, hey, we need to be thinking about this. It's not always easy, but just doing a simulated phishing attack on your employees, and seeing, hey, do people click on those links? Are they providing information that they shouldn't be? And then following up and providing additional training to those individuals. Very, very important. And then as the other top one here was vulnerability assessment and management. And I agree, you have to know where your vulnerabilities are. So these would be technical vulnerabilities. These are going to be systems that need to be patched, or if they can't be patched, how are you mitigating the risk of those systems? Really have to understand where and how those systems are, and then what to do and mitigate those systems. So, like I said, all of these are good and things to be looking at, and all of those different CPGs should definitely be looked at. So this is my last slide, but the main takeaways that I wanted to get out there is there needs to be an investment in cybersecurity, and that's really a critical piece, because it really is part of an enterprise risk management practice and function, because of the potential risk of that data being breached or compromised. And so we have to understand, what do we need in our organization to help protect us, help protect our systems. So the more we can do that, the more that we've got probably good cybersecurity posture, good cybersecurity maturity in place to protect our systems. We know that these breaches can be expensive, recovery costs can be astronomical, but we have to be able to then respond to that breach and be able to recover our systems in an efficient and quick manner, in order to limit those recovery costs and get our systems back up and running. Again, kind of going back, the way to do that is to understand our incident response and disaster recovery plans. Can we do that? Can we actually recover? Are our backups good enough? Can we bring those systems back online, and how fast can we actually do that? And really understanding that. And if you can't do it quickly, then what do you do to help mitigate that? What can you do? And really taking a look at vendors. This is something probably see a lot with the Change Healthcare breach, and understanding how a business partner or a vendor can impact not only your business, but also your data and systems. So understanding how how those could potentially impact your systems. And the attackers aren't going to go away. They're out there. They're getting better every day. This is all that they do, is find ways to attack, find those vulnerabilities, find issues. And so they're going to keep coming after you. So do remember that. It's definitely important to do. With that, I know we're out of time. I know there's definitely questions out there. I'll definitely respond to those questions and get back to you. But I really appreciate the time to go through this. I did put slides here in the next section. So if you do download the slide deck, you'll see those for sure. So thank you. Amy, I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Thank you, Troy. So yes, we are out of time, but thank you for a great presentation today. And then to our audience, if you met all CPE requirements, your certificate is available to download now in the CPE progress window. A copy will be emailed within 2 weeks as well. And then, as Troy mentioned, if you have further questions or comments, definitely don't hesitate to reach out and we can continue this conversation. And then finally, here is a link to a survey for today's presentation. Your feedback is always appreciated. And again, thank you for joining us. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.